It might not be what we want to happen, but we have to talk about why a Brad Marchand trade actually kind of makes sense for the Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Thursday, February 27th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Please do subscribe so that you never miss a thing. On today's podcast, we are going to preview tonight's game against the New York Islanders. Against all the odds and the numbers, the Bruins are still technically alive in the Eastern Conference playoff race, thanks to the Ottawa Senators losing last night. We'll also discuss why it kind of makes sense for the Bruins to explore or at least entertain a trade for Brad Marchand. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. Folks at Ian C. McLaren. So the NHL trade deadline is just over a week away, set for next Friday. And one of the big names reportedly on the market is our very own captain, Brad Marchand. And while he has made it clear that he wants to finish his career in black and gold, and general manager Don Sweeney has echoed his sentiment that he would like to keep the captain as a member of the Boston Bruins until the end of his career, it's kind of a perfect storm for maybe doing something big here. And there's a couple reasons why. For one thing, Brad Marchand's trade protection is not very expansive. You look at guys like David Pastrnak, Elias Lindholm, Charlie Coyle. Who else on this team? Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. They all have no movement clauses, which means they cannot be traded, sent to the minors, or waived without player approval. Whereas the captain, Brad Marchand, when he signed his contract, it came with a modified no trade clause, which means he has 8 teams on his list to whom he cannot be traded without permission. Coyle here, according to Puckpedia, has an 8-team no trade list and that no movement clause. So he can't be waived or sent to the minors without his approval, but he does have that 8-team no trade list. Some of these other guys have like pure lockdown, no trade protection, no movement clauses in their contracts. So for Brad Marchand, you think there's 8 teams around the NHL that he has flagged as destinations that he would not be willing to go to. The rest are completely on the table. So that's like 23 teams if you're not counting the Boston Bruins, of course. 23 teams make their best pitches for Brad Marchand, and that Don Sweeney, if it's just such a deal that he can't say no, he can trade Brad without having to get his approval. Who might be on that no trade list? Well, let's say Toronto, Montreal are on that list as rivals. Perhaps Winnipeg, not really a destination. Ottawa, some people have Edmonton on their no trade list. Maybe he has Vancouver on there as well. He doesn't want to go there. Let's say all the Canadian teams, so 7 teams, maybe a Florida on there as well. But there's still plenty of Stanley Cup contenders to whom he could be traded, or teams looking to add a player of his experience, of his skill set, and of the leadership that he brings both on and off the ice. So it's not far-fetched to think one of those teams could come up with a package that is incredibly tantalizing to the Boston Bruins. And here's the other thing. It takes two parties to come to an agreement on a contract extension. Marchand is an unrestricted free agent at season's end. And while he's saying he wants to stick around, the Bruins are saying they want to keep him around. There's still the matter of actually working out a contract. What's his valuation at 36 going on 37? How many years and at what price point do they want to sign him? Yes, the cap is going up, so it's not incredibly prohibitive to sign him to, say, like a 3-year deal at or even slightly above what he's making now. He certainly is bringing more to the table even this season at age 36 than Elias Lindholm, who's making $7.75 million and who is 6 years younger. He is the second best forward on the team and should be paid as such. He's making less right now even than Hampus Lindholm. And Jeremy Swayman, of course. So say the Bruins, everybody's saying, we want to maintain this relationship. We want Brad to retire as the captain of the Boston Bruins. But say they can't actually come to an agreement. And then you risk having him hit the open market and 31 teams free to talk to him to give them their best pitch, and they don't have to give up any assets to acquire him. That would be a huge mismanagement of an important. So, like, as we get closer here to next Friday, and it doesn't seem as though they're on the same page. Look at Jake DeBrusk last season. He walked instead of trading him. They're going to likely trade Trent Frederick, maybe Justin Brazeau, other unrestricted free agents. Maybe Parker Witherspoon is on the table here. Cole Koepke, Riley Tufte. You can't hold on to Brad Marchand in the hopes that you're going to re-sign him when you have the opportunity here to cash in before the trade deadline with some very important draft picks or prospects or even more NHL ready players that teams might be willing to cough up in exchange for a very valuable piece heading into the postseason. Yes, he might not be chasing a cup like Ray Bourque had in the past, having not won. Marchand, of course, has won Stanley Cup. So that kind of takes the pressure off in terms of reaching the later stages of your career and not having yet raised Lord Stanley's Cup. Does he have an appetite to win somewhere else? Does he have an appetite to uproot his family and finish his career elsewhere? Probably not. But as we've said on the podcast before, 4 of the past 5 Bruins captains have not ended their careers in black and gold. 3 of them were traded. Jason Allison, Ray Bourque, Joe Thornton. Zdeno Chara was effectively told, thank you for your service, but we're moving on. Bergeron, Patrice was allowed to retire, and he, perhaps he's on a different plane than Marchand, where we wouldn't even consider trading him. But if Marchand's going to want to play for a few more years, if the two sides are too far apart on valuation on his next contract and even term, and if one of those teams not on his trade list comes calling with a very serious package that you cannot just say, nope, sorry, we're not trading him. Even if one of those teams on his no trade list pops up with an even better offer and you have to try to persuade him to move, I mean, it's going to be maybe some difficult conversations here in the next week, but you can kind of see how it makes sense or why it makes sense to at least entertain the possibility of this happening. Shayna Goldman of The Athletic had an article this morning about this very topic and 5 potential destinations for the captain. We'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. If you're like me, your morning has to start with a great cup of coffee. But I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. And that's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, their coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the US, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll hand pick the perfect match for you. My first bag was a game changer. It had such a smooth, rich flavor, and I could actually tell the difference from my usual coffee. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. You will not regret it. It is so good. Drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. All right, so a Brad Marchand trade kind of does make sense from a movability point of view, from a perhaps contract, not stalemate, but differences in terms of evaluation and what you want to pay for him moving forward. As Shayna Goldman of The Athletic points out, Marchand's scoring rate is a shade below last year's 2.56 points per 60. His pace has gradually declined over the last 5 seasons, which is reasonable for a player in his mid to late 30s. The power play is struggling. And the real question is whether it's due to age-related decline or just a decline in terms of the team quality around him. And it's probably a bit of both. You could see how Marchand could thrive even more in an environment where there is better talent around him, similar to what we saw from the Four Nations face-off. He did have a limited role, but he looked pretty good. He isn't the star that a fringe playoff team should swing for, in Shayna's opinion. He's that final piece that can complete a contender and really amp up their Stanley Cup chances. And she lists 5 potential teams that he could go to, beginning with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He did just play for Four Nations face-off head coach John Cooper, playing with Anthony Cirelli, Brandon Hagel, Braden Point. So there's some relationship there. What the return would be, well, either the Bruins would have to retain some salary or a third-party broker would have to get involved for Marchand's contract. The Lightning's prospect pool is pretty thin, but they do have 2 seconds in 2025 and all of its 2026 picks. Maybe Connor Geekie needs to be thrown in. All right. We're not settling just for picks here. She then lists the New Jersey Devils. Marchand would have a real support from his center to kick his game up a notch, whether he's playing with Nico Hischier or Jack Hughes. The Devils have 3 2025 second-round picks and some up-and-coming players who could interest the Bruins, including Simon Nemec, who has apparently fallen out of favor in New Jersey. But since he's too good for the AHL, he's struggling at the NHL level. He's the ideal target for a team trying to quickly retool for next season. Mason Lohrei is a restricted free agent, so you're losing the benefit of that high-end guy playing on an entry-level contract. Let me see what Nemec's status is. I actually have him in my keeper fantasy league cap hit, so I should know this. He's in year 2 of 3 of his ELC, cap hit of 918,333 for next season. If they're willing to dangle Nemec and a couple picks, I mean, that's pretty tough to say no to, especially a player of his caliber. Dauber Hockey has him as one of their top-rated defensive prospects. He was the, second overall pick in second overall pick in 2022. 21, still a lot of meat on that bone, and that would be a difficult one to say no to for sure, especially with the Bruins' kind of aging defense core. Next, the Edmonton Oilers. Oh, and picking up Nemec could maybe also allow you to flip Brandon Carlo for some assets as well. The Edmonton Oilers, obviously so close to winning the Stanley Cup last season. They don't have a ton of assets to swing a deal. Their prospect pool lacks. Management has already spent much of its 2025 draft capital. They do have the Blues second and third rounders because of the offer sheets. So maybe they flip those. They need to move some salary out. Maybe Bruins retain and take Jeff Skinner off their hands to try to ease that drop in scoring. Maybe they pick up Matt Savoie. They're probably not going to trade him, or a Bo Akey, who's a talented defensive prospect. Oilers certainly a possibility. Shayna then lists the Kings. They have more assets to work with. They have the most picks. They have most of their picks over the next 2 years. Young talent that could help facilitate the Bruins retooling. Maybe an Alex Turcotte. Maybe a Brant Clark, who apparently is would be on the same level, if not a more enticing prospect than Simon Nemec. That could really be something that the Bruins would look at. The final team is the Vegas Golden Knights, which would reunite the captain with his former coach, Bruce Cassidy. They have a depleted asset pool, however, and who knows what they might be able to offer. He would be an upgrade on the left side behind Ivan Barbashev for them, and put Brad Marchand with Jack Eichel. That could be a real, really menacing duo there up front. Those are just 5 of the possibilities. Again, he has an 8-team no trade clause, so 23 teams could line up and make their best offers. If it appears as though he and the Bruins are far apart in contract negotiations heading into the trade deadline, then it's going to be really hard to say no if there is that possibility of getting a pretty good package. The only way this will go away is if they announce a contract extension before the trade deadline. But if they don't reach an agreement, if they don't trade him, and then they lose him, they can't come to an agreement, then that's going to be a tough one if he just walks in free agency this summer, if they can't come up with what he's asking for or can't come to an agreement. That would be the worst case scenario here for Brad Marchand and the Boston Bruins. It would be better to trade him, get a nice package, then have him leave in the summer for nothing. And as much as he says he wants to stay with the Bruins for the rest of his career, if they're going to undercut him or lowball him on his next deal because of concerns about declining production and age, then he could go elsewhere. Zdeno Chara kept playing well after the Bruins cut him loose. Marchand is younger, more gas left in the tank, and that would be an egregious, perhaps fireable offense to just let Brad Marchand leave in free agency without recouping anything in return. The Bruins do play tonight. Their slim playoff hopes are still alive, and they'll need to beat the New York Islanders in order to keep that going. We'll discuss that game here as the podcast continues. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Their app is so easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. It is a Boston Bruins game day, and they are playing a team chasing them in the Eastern Conference standings. The Bruins still on the outside looking in, but they're getting a big favor from the Ottawa Senators, who have now lost 5 games in a row. They're level with the Bruins and the New York Rangers at 62 points. All 3 of these clubs are 2 points back of the Columbus Blue Jackets, 4 points back of the Detroit Red Wings. The Bruins have played 59 games. The Red Wings, Blue Jackets, Rangers, and Senators have all played only 58. So if you look at point percentage, the Bruins are behind all of these teams. The New York Islanders are 5 points back of the Bruins, albeit with 2 games in hand. So a win tonight and then another win in that extra game could put them just 1 point back of our Boston Bruins. So it's a big swing game. The Bruins could really put a dent in the Islanders' hopes and could get themselves back level with some of these wild card teams here tonight. Now, these two teams have played twice this season. They've split so far, 6-3 win for the Bruins on November 27th, a 5-4 win for the Islanders back on January 5th. The Islanders and Bruins have both lost 4 games in a row. The Bruins have lost 2 in overtime, so they picked up 2 points, but 4 losses for them overall, and 4 losses for the Islanders as well, most recently to the New York Rangers. They also lost to Dallas, Minnesota, Winnipeg over that span. So they're 5-5 in their past 10. Bruins are 4-4-2. When it comes to special teams, there are a few teams worse than the Bruins on both the penalty kill and the power play. The Islanders have a 32nd ranked power play, a 31st ranked penalty kill. The Bruins slightly better at 29th and 25th on the power play and the penalty kill, respectively. The Islanders have a 27th ranked offense, 2.7 goals per game. Bruins are slightly better at 2.76. Their defense is 2.98 goals allowed per game, so 17th, whereas the Bruins are allowing 3.2 goals per game, which is ranked 24th. So overall, 29th on the power play, the Bruins are 25th on the penalty kill, 24th goals for and against per game. The Islanders have worse power play, worse penalty kill, fewer goals per game, and goals allowed per game to put them over the edge in that particular stat. The Islanders are the best face-off team in the NHL, so that could be to their advantage. Their goaltending, Ilya Sorokin, 903 save percentage. Semyon Varlamov, 889. The Bruins are at 897 for Swayman, 892 for Korpisalo. A lot of similarities between these two teams, really. Not a lot of depth. The Islanders are lacking that star power player right now. They're led in scoring by Bo Horvat and Anders Lee, both who have 41 points in 56 and 57 games. So where the Bruins have the advantage here is David Pastrnak, who's got 7 points over his past 5 games, including 3 goals, 4 assists. Morgan Geekie leading the way for this team with 4 goals over the past 5 games. Brock Nelson, Team America player, has 3 goals, 5 assists 3 goals, 5 points for 5 points over his last 5 games. So for the Bruins to stay in contention for a playoff spot, they really do. They needed to take that game against Anaheim. You can excuse them for losing to Toronto, who's a much better team, albeit in pretty disastrous fashion, picking up a point. They're seeing it as a positive, but there was 2 points on the table there. They could have 64 points right now instead of just 62. That would put them level with Columbus, who's currently in the final wild card spot at the moment. So on tomorrow's podcast, we will review whatever happens tonight, the storylines, stats, signals. We will preview the weekend's action, and we will bring you all the latest on the black and gold with regards to trade reports or rumors out there. Maybe not rumors per se, but if there's anything in terms of legitimate reports, we will certainly update you and post it on TikTok, post it on YouTube Shorts, post it on Instagram. So just search on, wherever you get podcasts, including the video portion as well. Please do check out the Locked On NHL podcast next. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. If you live in Ontario, get out and vote today for a new premier, hopefully. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.